Water droplets might look difficult to draw, but once you understand how they work, they're actually surprisingly straightforward. So today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I approach drawing these realistic water droplets. This video is an excerpt from a draw-along course inside my Hyperrealism Mastery program, where I teach the complete process of creating hyperrealistic drawings through structured lessons, pencil exercises, and guided drawing projects. This lesson is from the course Drawing Water Droplets, where we draw this flower together. This video begins with the outline and tonal values already in place, so if you'd like to draw along with me today, simply shade and blend a block of mid-grey tone on some smooth paper using a graphite pencil and tissue paper. So let's jump straight into drawing some water droplets. Now, so far, we've prepared, right? We've prepared some of these water droplets already. We have many, many more that we want to add in, all these little ones. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to just retrospectively add water droplets. And I recommend once you've done this drawing, go and find some other reference images with water droplets on, and you will see that they all look very similar. The way water droplets behave is pretty consistent. One of the rules, let's say, of water droplets is they're generally lighter than their surroundings. Now, why is this? As far as I can logic it through with you, if we think about it, light is hitting this flower, of course, from probably the sun in this instance, and light is passing through these water droplets. It's reflected around inside the water a little bit, and so it appears a little bit lighter. We can use that understanding of water droplets to apply them to everything, which is fantastic. You can almost take a reference that doesn't even have water droplets on it and add them retrospectively. As long as you study the way the light is hitting your subject, you can do this. In the instance of this image, for example, the light is coming from above. It's coming in this direction from the top down. And you can see the water droplets are literally casting shadows. And then there's a refraction across the top here, dark edges and dark shadows. And also notice they don't all look the same. Big, thick, dark shadow on this one. Tiny, tiny light shadow on this one. Dark shadow. Lighter shadow. They're all a little bit subtly different. And again, that is so important to get this to look really convincing, is not drawing every single droplet the same. So where do we begin? Well, I'm looking at these guys, and they're all super bright. Brighter than we have them currently on our picture. So what do? We get our kneaded eraser, and this is how we're going to draw all of these water droplets. This is why they're so fun. They're super easy to draw. So I've got my kneaded eraser, I've brought it to a fine point, and now I'm going to lift the tone. And can you see they're darker at the top? All of them are darker at the top, so I'm not going to lift the tone at the top, but I am going to lift it everywhere else. And I'm not going to be shy. We're trying to bring this all the way back up, almost to the colour of the paper. You can also use the Tombow here if you want to. I'm going to start by lifting it with the kneaded eraser because you get a more natural, soft look. And we're drawing water, and water is soft and not hard, right? So we want it to look soft. So it's a little bit slow with these really big droplets. This one here, let's lift it up a little bit in the foreground, but just a little bit. And have patience with the kneaded eraser. You just want to go over again and again and again and again and again. I'm just going back and forth, sort of stroking it across the surface of the paper. There we go. That's really starting to get somewhere now. And hopefully you can see why using the kneaded eraser here instead of a Tombow is so good, because we get these soft gradients, we get these, it almost looks better than on the reference picture if I'm honest, because it has more shape to it. And that's what we're always aiming for with things like water droplets, is shape and form, getting nice gentle gradients and something that looks really natural. So I'm quite happy with these tonal values that we've achieved. Before we continue, because these aren't finished yet, but before we continue with them, let's start to add some more droplets. I'm going to show you how easy this is. I'm going to get my HB. Let's look at this one here. This is a nice obvious one to add in. So I'm going to find its approximate location. You can add it wherever you like as well. Just look at droplets in the area and see how they're behaving. So you see all of these are behaving, the way the light is interacting with them is fairly similar, but also notice how it's different to these. These have like a line down the centre here. This line here looks to me to be the edge of the leaf, and it's the way the light is refracting within the droplet. So I've just drawn an oval. I'm going to shade the top a little bit. I think my pencil's a little bit sharp. Give a little gradient at the top. This is how we drew all of the others earlier, remember? The difference here is it's just a bit darker in the centre. I'm going to give it a shadow. We can come back and refine this all later, but this is just our starting point. And then I get my kneaded eraser and I'm going to lighten up inside this droplet, biasing that lightness to the lower edge. As you can see, it's lightest here and darkest here, so I'm giving it that gradient, and that's what's going to help keep it feeling really nice and natural. Fabulous. Working on that shadow a bit. I might come back later with a 2B or something just to finish it up, but continuing with the HB, let's add some of these droplets in. Now these droplets are smaller and they're almost complete circles, aren't they? They have a slight flatness along the bottom here, but they're tiny, and then they have a nice round circular top that's quite dark. So I'm using my pencil a little bit sharper here, and there's a line that I pointed out earlier, so I'm going to add that in, and this time I'm not going to use the kneaded eraser, I'm going to use the Tombow because we have a very crisp white tone within this. And then there's a shadow, and I want the graphite to be a bit blunter for that shadow. We'll come back later with a darker pencil and add to that. Let's add this droplet here next. Slightly flatter under edge and then a nice round top. And then I've got my Tombow to lighten up inside, and then a blunt HB, all with the HB this is because the petal's very light, add in that little shadow. Great, let's do some more. Let's add some more up here. These are all quite small. I'm looking at this droplet. I am copying exact droplets so that you can see exactly how I draw them. But what you can do if you want is just look at a droplet and look at how it's behaving. Maybe draw it somewhere, but then you can draw it again somewhere else. Copy its form approximately and apply it to a new made-up water droplet. There's like a dark line that runs across the top there, which I think, like I said earlier, is the top edge of this petal. And then it has a dark top. There we go. Could be a little bit lighter still. These are really tiny, so take your time with them. Now these really small ones, the way I would approach those is almost just take the Tombow, do a little line, really short one like that, which is, for example, the white highlight of this, and then draw the rest of the droplet around it. Really tiny. My HB's nice and sharp here. Little tiny shadow. And the reason I did the Tombow first there is because when we're working at this kind of scale, to accurately get the Tombow to erase that little bit after we've drawn the water droplet in requires a level of precision and control that's extremely difficult. Whereas this way, we can draw a little white highlight first and then add a bubble around it. No problem. little shadow. They've all got the same thing going on here. A strong form at the top, and a little shadow and a white highlight. So you can add as many of those as you want. I'm going to come back and add some more later. Let's look back at these large bubbles. One thing I'm going to do here, it doesn't show in the reference photo so much, I'm going to add a little highlight with the Tombow to all of them. Just something subtle. You see that little tiny line I've just added in there? Just to give them a little bit more form. I can see a slight highlight that runs across the top of this one. You see that? So I'm gonna draw that in, and a little one there. Okay, and now I've got my HB. Now it's time to crisp up. It's slightly out of focus on the picture, but it doesn't matter. We can see the bubbles up here. We can look at those and apply what's happening here to these larger bubbles. First of all, nice crisp top, a little gradient, crisp underside, and I want to darken some of those tones in a minute with a different pencil. Crisp top again here. Now looking at this droplet, crisp top, a little bit of a gradient, and then a much lighter shadow here. There's not much of a shadow that I can see on these ones right in the foreground. And I add a bit of a shadow, but not too much. This one looks like it has a shadow coming this way. You see this and this little bit of a shadow on that side. Now looking over here at this bubble. If you'd like to draw this entire project and many more from start to finish with me guiding you every step of the way, check out the link in the description below the video. Awesome. So let's now get our 2B Stapler Black. And we're going to use this to draw some of these really dark tones in. So starting with this bubble, there's a much richer shadow under there. I'm fading through. I've drawn a line and now I'm doing little tiny oval circular motions just to soften the edge that gives the impression of a gradient. Now the upper edge of this bubble, that's very dark. So let's firm it up and darken it with the 2B. Same with the shadow, could just be a little bit darker. The upper side of this bubble, just in the corner here, just want it a bit darker. See how this just helps the droplets to pop out the paper a little bit more and feel a little bit more lifelike in 3D. And it doesn't need much, it's just a little bit. Really nice, thick, dark shadow on this one. Great, and now the upper edge of the bubble needs a lot more defining. Now I want to extend that tone down. I'm drawing in a gradient here, little oval shading movements. And there's a bit of a shadow down here. Let's get the HB. Just for this little vein that extends down here. And there's also another vein here. Add that in. And then this, can you see this vein here, where we've got this shadow extending across? You can actually see it through into the bubble. So I'm going to just add that in as well. It's kind of like a choppy, wibbly line. So I'm doing all this with the HB. Just showing some of the ways that the light is interacting with the flower. Okay, let's add some of these little bubbles here. So just as we did before, we've got our HB. This has got that flat underside because we're looking at it at an angle. So it's got a flat underside, a curved top, thick tone at the top there, a shadow, the gradient, and then get out the Tombow and get a little flick, a little highlight. Let's add some more. Little tiny one here. Okay, and we have this one here. Let's add that in. Flat underside, curved top, gradient, and I'm going to use the Tombow here just to lighten the inside of that, and then it needs a shadow. Let's look at this bubble again that we added in earlier. Just crisp it up a little bit more. I'm using my sharp HB here to just clearly define these edges and make them a little bit darker. Notice how I'm biasing the darkness to the top and the bottom. There's a couple of little tiny ones here, so I'm going to add those in. Starting with the highlights because they're so small. And never neglecting to give them a dark top and a shadow. Now these are super blurry here, but I'm going to show you that you can just add them in anyway. So we draw a circle. It has a dark top with a gradient. It has a strong highlight. I'm going to use the Tombow here because of the size of the bubble. A little highlight and then a shadow. And the shadow is sort of running, I can see from the picture the shadow is running in this direction. All with a HB. Can add another one right at the end. I can see there's one on the picture, very blurry, but it's got a very defined dark top to it. And then it has a highlight. Let's use the Tombow because the bubble's quite small. Right, there are lots of little small bubbles. So let's just spend a few minutes and add some of these tiny, teeny bubbles in. And also slightly larger bubbles like this one. So I draw a circle, a dark on the top, I add a bit of a shadow and a little highlight. And again, I draw a little circle, dark on the top, add a little shadow and a fleck of a highlight. And remember, we can do it the other way as well. If they're really small, we can do a couple of little tiny highlights and then we can draw a circle around them. Just light pressure. Darken the top off, add a shadow. Let's do it again here. And these I'm giving a little bit of a flat bottom edge to because we're looking at them slightly side on. That's how they look in the reference. Great stuff. Take a step back and have a look. See how you feel about it. You can make it up now. You can add little bubbles in wherever you like. Let's add some small ones in here. Start with the highlights. I don't want them all to be the same size. I don't want them to have even distribution because that's not how water droplets behave. They are random. So draw them as such. Extend some of these shadows a little bit more, make them a little bit longer. Now some of my smaller droplets at the moment feel a little bit dark. They're kind of like almost too separated from the flower. But I can just take my kneaded eraser and do a single dot, roughly match the end of the kneaded eraser to the size of the bubble and just push once to lighten it back up a little bit. And that can help them to just sit a little bit more naturally. And if it picks it up too much, don't push down as hard. And then I can come back in. Some of these are a little bit overcooked on the lightening. Just ever so slightly. You can also use a H pencil here. And there we have it, realistic water droplets. Hope hopefully what you've taken away from this lesson is that drawing realistic water isn't really about drawing water droplets. It's about understanding the principles behind them, understanding how light interacts with a surface, understanding how to create depth through tonal values, understanding how small changes in contrast can completely change the way something appears. And those same principles apply to almost everything we draw in hyperrealism. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to learn more about my complete approach to hyperrealistic drawing, this is exactly what I teach inside my Hyperrealism Mastery program. You'll find structured lessons, pencil exercises, and guided draw-along courses designed to help you develop the skills and confidence to create your own realistic drawings. There's a link in the description if you'd like to find out more. And if you enjoyed this lesson, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss a video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.